Welcome to the Always Better Than Yesterday YouTube channel. I am your host, Ryan Hartley. This channel is for heart-centered leaders just like you. I hope our time spent together helps you leave a heartprint where those around you are left better than yesterday. These interview sessions are sponsored by our great friends at Elevate Online Marketing. On episode 174, I'm joined by John David and Anna Gabriel Mann, the co-authors of The Go-Giver Marriage. John David is the co-author of the Go-Giver series of books, and if you've been around this podcast a while now, you know that we've been fortunate enough to have his co-author, Bob Burg, join us on two separate occasions. This time, John David is back co-authoring The Go-Giver Marriage with his wife, Anna Gabriel Mann. And it's amazing to hear how they bring the Go-Giver philosophy, the heart of the Go-Giver, into personal relationships. It's a great conversation, one that I hope really inspires your relationships. Here we go, episode 174 with John David and Anna Gabriel Mann. John, Anna, welcome to the Always Better Than Yesterday podcast. How are you both?
We are excellent. Better than yesterday.
So happy to be here.
Always. John, I just want to take this opportunity at the very start to just do a bit of a personal thank you. My previous life, I spent 12 years in the UK police service, and I was a little bit different. You can probably tell I've got a heart on my logo. I really believe in love and service and heart-centered leadership, and I wasn't seeing that with my eyes. And your wonderful book with Bob Burg, The Go-Giver Leader, spoke of a style of leadership that I just wasn't seeing. And just know that your words in that book have really encouraged me and the way that I now are able to show up and help people. So I just wanted to say a huge heartfelt thank you for the words that you've shared.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so very much. That was the most personal to me of the Go-Giver books until this next one. But yes, that book has a special place in my heart. So that's really, really lovely to hear.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I want to start this conversation with something that Dee says in The Go-Giver Marriage. And she says, marriage can be quite the puzzle. Talk to us about the origins of this book and what kind of puzzle we're trying to put together.
Sweetheart?
Well,
you.
Go ahead.
Well, just speaking to the origins, just to sort of set the stage, the original Go-Giver came out in 2008. The first draft of the original Go-Giver, which looked very different, but still was its essence, slipped off my desktop printer in 2005. So it's nearly 20 years ago. And when it did, Anna read the first draft and she said, this is great. This is going to be huge. And this would be a great book on marriage, because she said the things you're talking about in this book, that describes the way we are. And that's, in a nutshell, our agenda. Ever since then, we wanted to write this book. And it was Anna's idea, and it grows out of her career and her love, her calling, her lifelong passion to help support couples, people to live richer lives and to see themselves more clearly, and out of that to live richer lives. And it also is born of an expression to share, what we have. Not that we're perfect, but we've been through difficult circumstances in life, been through difficult relationships, and both seem to have arrived at a place where we're just gloriously, crazily happy, and it just gets better. We've been together for 25 years, and we are so bold as to think that's not an accident. There's something intentional about how happy we are. So we wanted to share that with the world.
I love that. Anna, I'll share a story with you. So when growing up, Ryan Hartley was a young kid that needed a lot of love in the world. He didn't necessarily hear the words "I love you" said about him very much as a young boy, and so in my relationship with my wife, she would say "I love you," and I would say, "Why? Tell me three things." And it would be a little running joke because it would be like this. I would clearly be too needy. I'd need to know, and it made me laugh hearing your tips in the Go-Giver Marriage, which is about be specific. be attentive and be specific to the reasons. So I went straight into my wife. I was like, see?
I was right all along.
Yeah. I'm not keeping score, but yeah, 100%. I really like that. I love the fact you kind of share that story in the fairy tale, and the princess asks, and I understand that there's some origins behind that story. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about that.
I think you should tell that, sweetheart.
The origins behind the princess story?
Yeah, when she asks about, tell me why you love me, be specific, give me some examples.
I'm not sure the origin, John. I'm not certain what you.
I'll just say so there's, for the listeners who don't know this, there's the first part of the book is called the parable, and the second part of the book is called the practice. And the parable, of course, is a story. It's a story about a young couple set in modern times, current times, Tom and Tess, who don't have the worst marriage, but they're struggling. They have some struggles in their life that they're dealing with. And right in the middle of their story, Tom is having an job interview of his life. He's having a very, very important job interview. And the interviewer starts kind of out of the blue telling this fairy tale, which leaves Tom completely flummoxed of what on earth is going on. Why is he telling me this children's story in the middle of a job interview? But the story, the fairy tale, is about a young man and a princess. And in that story, the young man and the princess say every day they go off to work separately, and then they come back together at night, and the young man says, I love you, and the princess says, I love you too. And then they have dinner, and they just are in love and have a wonderful life. And one day he comes home from work and he says, I love you. And she says, you do? He says, well, yeah, of course. She says, well, why? And he says, well, she said, how? Tell me specifically. And she says, I love you more than all the stars there are in the sky. But she wants specifics. She says, I need specifics here. Tell me exactly. And the young man and the princess story is kind of my Neil Gaiman rendering of the story of Anna and me. And so she's the princess and I'm the young man. And one thing we've learned together is, one thing I learned from her is the power of voicing appreciation very specifically. And she'll tell me things like, I just want to tell you, thank you so much for taking out the trash. You do it all the time. And I don't have to do it because you do it. And I really appreciate it. And at first, when she would do this, I would think, why is she thanking me for taking out the trash? It's like, it's not a big thing. But I gradually realized that the little things are the big things. That appreciation is always about little things. It's always about specific things. It's always to the moment, to the time, to the here and now. And when you put your finger on it, it means that you're really noticing the things about the other person. It means that you care about them. It means they're meaningful. They're not some broad, grandiose statement like, I love you like the ends of the earth. Well, that's lovely, but what does that mean exactly?
Hey, my friends, thank you for being with us so far. I really hope that you're enjoying the conversation. I wanted to take a quick moment to let you know that our brand new website is live. Please do visit abty.co.uk. I hope that it enables you to connect with us at a heart level and to explore our heart work and how we may serve you, your team, and your organization that little bit better through our coaching, our consulting, and our speaking. It also gives you the opportunity to come and join one of our greenhouses and see some examples of our heart print. It's abty.co.uk. Other great things on there, some free resources. There are access to your life languages profile that you can take for free, as well as our merchandise store. abty.co.uk. And here we go, back to the conversation. I love that. And, I think for the listeners to be able to get a deeper connection with kind of my story is that, one of the amazing things that happened during the pandemic is, for my birthday, my wife bought me a blueberry bush, and on it she put 10 little cardboard love hearts with different reasons why she loved me. And honestly, it was so powerful. And such a testament to like the transformational journey that we'd been on, because only kind of 18 months beforehand, I was seeing elements of the Tom and Tess story around kind of the resentment, the scorekeeping, and how if you're not growing together, you're kind of growing apart. And there was a moment in our journey where things were bad, and my wife found God. She found Christianity, faith, and I was a man of science at this point. And she's like, I found God. I'm starting to feel differently. You need to find him too. And I was like, not a chance. I was like, who's invited this guy into our relationship? And like, God's obviously got a sense of humor. Within 6 short months, I'm opening myself up to faith and accepting Jesus as my king, and an incredible kind of transformations have happened. And I'm grateful that we did that before the pandemic, because if we had, we'd have killed each other otherwise. Like if we hadn't had that restoration. And I guess the point I want to draw to is, I really hold this firm belief that 1 + 1 = 3. That when we choose to partner together, something new gets created in the world. And I love the way that you describe that, is that when 1 + 1 comes together, you create us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that third entity, you are either feeding it or you are starving it at all times by your behavior and your actions and the energy that you bring to the relationship. I mean, it's such a powerful thing. People really don't understand that the relationship itself is its own entity. It is something that you've created together, and it's something that you need to nourish together.
Yeah. I also love that you said that, because it sounds so simple, right? 1 + 1 = more than 2. Well, that's the kind of statement that anybody could say, well, yeah, sure, I get that. But hang on, because really a lot of people, they don't say it this way perhaps, but a lot of people in marriages come into, over time, this sort of tired sense that 1 + 1 = something less than 2. Like, here I am living my life, and now because I'm married, my life, there's compromise. I have to make compromises because she doesn't like all the same things I like, and I can't do everything I want to do because I have to consider her. And so now my life has become a limited version of what it could be. And so 1 + 1 now equals less than 2, because marriage is a limitation. Marriage is a compromise. And we see it the opposite. It's the opposite of that, which is 1 + 1 means through my marriage, in my marriage, I have the opportunity to become a bigger person than I could ever have been on my own. So I'm not just me, I'm a bigger one, and she's a bigger one. When you make an us, it is 3. It is bigger than 2, because our us is a bigger entity than the sum of the two of us. It's something larger. And that's thrilling to discover. And I think that everybody who's genuinely happy in their marriage has found that, whether they put that name on it or not.
I think the commercial world's got a lot to answer for, because I think it's really taken this sentiment of love from away what it truly is. This idea that love, you complete me. It's just so disparaging, isn't it? It really takes away from the essence of what you've just said.
Exactly. We're 2 individuals. I mean, that's the piece about coming together. It's 2 individuals who come together and form this third entity, the us. And yet you still remain your separate selves with your own, likes and dislikes, and you are your own unique person with your own unique way of expressing yourself in the world. And that all of that needs to be honored by the us.
And I think that the thing that the commercial world really misses is that love is a verb, right? And I know that you talk about that within your book.
Yes, love is not only a verb, but in the world of therapy, which is where I've resided for a long time, there's talking therapy where the goal is insight and understanding, and that's lovely. But what we know in marriages, and it's been backed by, over 40 years of research in marriage, is that it's behavior. It's cognitive and behavioral. That when you make the changes in your mind, and you make the changes in your behavior, that's when couples will find new memories. They'll create new memories. They'll create new ways of relating to each other. And a reciprocal kind of kindness starts to emerge. You know, it's so important that the tone of the marriage can shift. And when you start practicing the secrets, you see that the way you're bringing yourself to the relationship has shifted, and therefore the us is starting to feel that, you know, the other person is saying, well, this is feeling good. You know, if you've been someone who's been accustomed to criticizing a lot, you know, and suddenly you're appreciating your partner, you know, they will, you know, be like, okay, what's going on here? Because it's not the same tone. And yet your brain has a neurological loop, and you can buy into one or the other. You can buy into the critical track where you're always looking at your partner and saying, why did he leave his socks on the floor again? And why can't he wash his teacup after he drinks his tea? Why does it live on the side of the counter waiting for me? You know, you can think in that negative, critical way, or you can think in the really positive way of like, wow, I so appreciate he drove the kids to school today because I didn't have to. And I could have an extra 30 minutes to just sit on the patio with a cup of tea and figure out my morning, maybe space out on social media, whatever. You know, it was just a break. And if you look at it as a gift that he gave you, then it has a whole new meaning. Because, you know, everybody gets in their roles often in marriages, and, you know, those roles can be really difficult. So it's often really important to break out of the roles and for everybody to share the burden of taking care of a house, taking care of children, taking care of life.
There's something to it. You know, everything Anna's describing, this business of behaviors and how behaviors can shift the tone of your marriage and what you bring to the marriage and how you know, what you put in. These are all things you do. They're all things you do. They're not things that happen to you. And, you know, there's a line in the original Go Giver where Pindar says to Joe, I think, in fact, Joe, you'd be surprised how much you have to do with what happens to you. And he's really shifting Joe's mindset from being the effect of things to being the cause of things, to being at cause, to being taking responsibility for his life. And that's a big theme in our work and in Anna's work. It's, you said, Ryan, you know, that you love this love as a verb thing. And I think it's so important because many of us, you know, we have these expressions that are passive. I fell in love. You know, it's like there's an American country song that the title of which is "I fell in a pile of you and got love all over me." Well, that's how people imagine love. It's like it fell out of the sky and draped me with it. Well, it feels like that when you first fall in love. It feels like a cloudburst. It feels like something that God just, you know, sent down from on high, and it is that. But it doesn't stay like that. To build the love, it's not something that just is going to come out of the sky every day. It's already come out of the sky, and now it's on you, and now it's your job. Now it's your responsibility. And now what you do is you build it, you nourish it. Build is maybe the wrong word. It's more like you water it, you nourish it, you feed it. It's a living organism. And so it's I'm just saying it's a verb. It's a thing you actually do every day. Yeah.
And it's not an accident that this tree is in our background. The tree is in the book. And you know, when you plant a new tree, say you've decided to put a peach tree in your yard, it's really important to feed the soil. It's really important to water it while its roots are getting established. And that's one of the real secrets to a marriage, is that it's that constant feeding and nourishing of the marriage itself. And that includes nourishing the other person. And what I love to add to this, Ryan, is that, you know, every one of us is still a very vulnerable child inside. Most of us did not get our needs met in our childhood. Many of us had horrific situations happen during our childhood. And all of that emotional baggage that was there when we were very young gets carried all the way through adolescence and into adulthood. And then when we arrive into a relationship, these suitcases of emotional baggage start magically unpacking. And that's not an accident. Your unconscious has drawn you to this person specifically so that you can figure out, all of these early wounds. The minute you're in a close relationship, all of the things that you experienced in close relationships in your childhood will start to emerge. And that's, it's so powerful if you can unwrap it and not blame the other person and not acquire the behaviors. Like maybe you had a really critical father who you could never do anything right for. Well, you can grow up and you can either marry someone who's critical or you can be the someone who's critical. And, we always carry these behaviors forward. So it's important to wake up to that and also to stay aware of your emotions. And, I often tell my clients, when you're feeling like you want to burst, just breathe for 2 minutes and don't say a word. Because if you can get aware of your emotions and get some control over them, then you're not going to start that rapid fire conversation that turns into a major fight.
Yeah, I love that. And just on the theme of criticism, I often, my wife's distress flare, now I know it as that, is one of criticism, and which is fair, because I can be quite messy to live with. But when she would, and I would describe that criticism as having like an enemy behind the lines. It's almost like you can't even be safe in your own home.
Yes,
And
yes.
and it's not until we really started, to really just connect to this essence of we're human beings with unmet needs, and therefore we'll show behaviors that are probably not conducive, that we really start to, when we understand the roots of that and where it comes from, this great thing happens, which is called grace, which is something
Yes.
I'm grateful that we have in our marriage now, which we probably didn't. And especially when life and children and work happens, like, grace is so important. And I think that's what you capture in the essence of your secret allow.
That is exactly. In fact, that's so interesting. I don't think the word grace appears in the book anywhere. I don't think. Gracious, I think, probably does, but frequently when we're talking about it, we'll use that word. We'll say the third secret, allow. It really, at its essence, it's giving your partner grace. It's having, like we call, a grace period, right? You get a bill and you have to pay it, but they give you a grace period of 10 days. Well, that's kind of what allow is. Give your spouse a little bit of extra time, a little extra support, a little extra benefit of the doubt, a little extra space sometimes, because none of us is perfect and we don't express ourselves perfectly, which is, in part because we're human beings. Our parents, for example, I was honest talking about our childhoods. Even the best of parents, they're imperfect beings. They can't get it perfectly right, despite their best intentions. And they did the best they could with what they had. But, none of us escapes childhood without these patterns of dysfunction that Anna talks about, that often stay buried until we're in an intimate relationship that provides a space safe enough for those suitcases to start doing their terrifying, unlatching and opening by themselves.
It's really interesting. Like, so the only, like, yesterday, so my wife and I, we've been journeying in this, the more we've learned about ourselves, the more we're able to articulate, because I think you just said the word expression. And I think the really hard thing that we will struggle with as human beings is to articulate that which transcends understanding. We're talking about love, and my wife yesterday, in a humorous kind of embrace, she grabbed my cheeks and said, I'm never going to abandon you. She's like, wherever you go, I'll find you. And obviously she's like having this humorous conversation, knowing that my vulnerability is one of people in my life abandon. And it's just, honestly, it's just such a that understanding between two human beings, that their deepest flaws and insecurities, and knowing that there is a safety in that, I think it's the essence of a purpose of a marriage, I say, but you go one step further in the book, and you define the purpose of a marriage. Is that right?
Yeah. There's this question posed at the very end of chapter 1.
Yeah.
The interviewer said, so tell me, Tom, what is the purpose of marriage? And when Tom sets about to answer that, or try to, he flounders. He never thought about it before.
Yeah. It's the expression,
purpose
right?
of marriage. Yeah, purpose of marriage. It's a companionship. Two heads is better than one.
Yeah.
He tries various
Raise
things.
healthy children.
Yes, raise healthy children, give our children a good life, and these are all good things, by the way. They're all wonderful goals and reasons to be together, but they're not. He says, beyond that, what's that purpose? What's the purpose of life? And and the way, I won't give the exact wording of the book, but basically the purpose of the way we describe it in the book is to invest yourself in another person, fully and totally, not as a 50-50 thing. I scratch your back, you'll scratch mine. Well, 3.5 nights of dishes. Each of us gets, equal share. Here's your checkbook. Here's my checkbook. Not that, but fully invested. All my money is your money, right? All your chores are my chores. All your burdens are my burdens. Fully invest yourself in the other person. And as a result, you become your biggest self. You discover your biggest life. You come into the fullest expression of who you are. It's the opposite of a compromise. It's a leapfrogging of possibilities, where suddenly you enter into possibilities that were not open to you before. So that's really, to me, the ultimate purpose of marriage is that fuller expression of yourself. It only comes with giving yourself away.
I love that.
It's something like what a parent does with a child. When a mother lion, mother tiger will do anything, a mother human will do anything for their child. It's a growing into a bigger purpose.
My wife and I went on holiday a couple of weeks ago, and every night we'd sit and we had this Netflix binge. We don't normally sit and watch Netflix, but we watched this series on Netflix called Love is Blind. And I think it's terrible. I don't believe that love is blind. I think love sees all. And I know that you have this wonderful phrase that love has the eyes of an eagle. I absolutely love that description. Do you mind exploring that with us?
Absolutely. Yeah. Love has the eyes of an eagle, because really, when you love somebody, you understand their soft underbelly, if you will. You get to know all parts of them, and so their vulnerabilities. The things that they struggle with, and even if you think you don't, and they're very defended, something's wrong. And so it's not. Love isn't just blind, like you just decide, oh, I don't see that part of him or her. Yep. You see it all. And the truth is that, the question is, will you be compassionate with it all? Will you be kind with it? Will you be, will you allow grace? And also, will you allow growing? I mean, growing is also really important for each individual in a marriage. I mean, it's not something that it's like air. We can't live without the ability to keep growing in our lives. And just because we get into a marriage doesn't mean that we should be looking to the marriage to get all our needs met. And I think a lot of times people will do that. They will get into the marriage and say, okay, now I'm safe. Now I'm here in this couple and I can just relax. And what relax means is fall into all their bad behaviors, feeling like they've got a safe haven. If you want a safe haven, you need to create a safe haven. And part of creating a safe haven is being a safe person for your partner, because they need that security that their vulnerabilities, but you're not going to exploit them.
Yeah, I love that. Last year for Lent, just before Christmas, I decided to fast for 3 days. Thought I'd do a 72-hour fast just to test the capabilities of my spirit. And the further I got into that fast, the more I had to fight the forces of focusing on myself. I'm a feeder. I'm the one that often like cooks and gets the food for
Mhm.
the family. And I found that really hard to do whilst I hadn't had what I needed. You know, I hadn't eaten for nearly 72 hours. The overriding urge to put myself before them, I had to fight it. And I think that's kind of links a little bit to what you say about how do we come to the marriage needing nothing, and therefore we become the gift. And I really like that your fifth secret is not focused on them, but instead focusing on us. Like, what are some of the ways that is not necessarily men, but anybody in a relationship that can learn to lead themselves to a point where they can serve and sacrifice for the us?
I think, shall I
Yeah,
say something?
yeah,
the
go for it.
you know, you mentioned men, and I think one thing that you know, we often speak in this secret of grow, and in every Go Giver book, the fifth secret is always seemingly paradoxical or contradictory to the other four,
Yeah.
like a thumb. So if the first four are about being generous with your spouse, the fifth, as you say, is about being generous with yourself. And we often talk about things like taking care of your health and taking care of your needs, and also growing yourself
Yeah.
in your interests, in your aspirations, and in
Yeah.
your pursuits. And these are all really, really critical and important avenues of growth, because
Yeah.
you need to grow yourself not only for your own sake, but also to bring a more fully realized person to the marriage. But there's another part of grow, which I think is really key, and maybe more so for men particularly than women. I don't know, and that is to take the time, and sort of psychic time or mental time, emotional time, to uh, to investigate the interior landscape.
Hmm.
You know, to start to examine or reflect on my childhood, the things that have happened to us growing up, how we arrived at adulthood, or adolescence, and then adulthood. Um, Often we just, in the course of our adult lives, we just kind of buck up and buckle down, and we have responsibilities, and you know, we may be also cooking for the family and taking care of the family. We have a job, we're developing ourselves in the world professionally. We have so many things that we take on as our tasks, like knights in armor. And so the armor often becomes, we don't take the time to look within.
Yeah.
And investigate our own vulnerabilities and our own sensitivities and our own injuries, our own wounds. And you know, the soft spaces that Anna talks about. Of course, marriage is lovely for that, because a partner can frequently see you better than you see yourself. So your spouse can be your guide in this tour, in this exploration. Can be your Sherpa on this expedition into your interior landscape. But I think that's part of grow.
But that's also conditional on whether or not you are open to following. And there's a great deal of marriage research that shows that men who can take direction from women are much more successful in their marriages. And men who are not open to direction from women often fail at marriage and or have unhappy marriages. And 75% of the people that are married actually cite that they're not happily married. And
across the board,
here in the United States, divorce is at 50%. So it's and that's regardless of faith. You know, I mean, it used to be a shame if in the faith-based community, if you got divorced, you were almost shunned. But that's no longer true, because everybody knows somebody who's on their second or even their third marriage. And I think that people don't self-examine. So grow is not only an opportunity to self-examine. It could be, you know, one of the ways you grow might be to get into therapy or coaching. One of the ways that you grow might be to not necessarily seek a new career, but to take on an avocation that you love. Maybe you're into birding, or you become a master gardener, or you take up painting or photography. some interest that really is powerful for you, that keeps you intrigued. Maybe you love to read nonfiction books and, you know, gain information that helps you to learn new things.
Yeah.
It's that curiosity, that ability to remain a constant learner, that really allows you to have something to bring back to the marriage and to feed the us. Because if you don't grow yourself, you're stagnating. And what happens is people wake up 25 or 30 years into the marriage, and they're both sitting in their easy chairs watching TV, and they have nothing to say to each other. The TV is the conversation. And that's a sad moment, you know, and I think a lot of people miss the intimacy of not just sex, but the intimacy of really, really close conversations where you're getting down to some really deep stuff. Even to come home from work and really go into an in-depth conversation about how your boss makes you feel and what it reminds you of from your childhood. You know, this guy makes me feel just like I'm standing in front of my father when I was 6 years old. And I just feel so intimidated, and I lose my ability to speak and say anything back because I'm sort of arrested. Those kinds of conversations, when somebody's really open to listening, can be such a salve in the midst of you know, pain that's real. And we all have pain. This is the thing about life. It's very painful. There's pain for everybody. I mean, talk to any woman who's had a miscarriage. You know, couples will often divide over this issue because one of them is still in serious grief 3 months later, and the other one is saying, hey, let's get going. Let's try again. And it's not that she doesn't want to try again, but she hasn't processed what's happened.
It's really interesting you say that. The thing that was coming up for me just a minute ago was this idea that some of the objections within marriage is that the woman wants to just express, to be seen and to be heard, and the stereotypical man just wants to fix things. And one of the one-liners from the Go Giver leader that I absolutely loved was that the leader is the caretaker of the intangibles. It was one of my favorite lines. And you know, and I guess that's something that I encourage all men to. It's not, we call it soft skills, it's anything but soft. It can be some of the hardest things and the most scariest things to embrace, but I'd love to hear about some of the intangibles within a marriage.
Oh, I love talking about the intangibles, because one of them is simply listening. And the thing is that men really do want to rush in and fix. You know, you come home from work and you know, they have all kinds of ideas for what you should do. And really what you need is to just be heard. You need them to listen. You don't need them to fix it. Often women have said to me in coaching and counseling that they don't want him to fix it. They just want him to hear them and listen to them. And the thing that's important in that moment is that when you really fully witness another person, that's a huge gift. It's a huge gift. And it is a skill to develop, because I think that often in conversations, and it doesn't even matter if it's at work or in your marriage, we are thinking about what we're going to say next while the person is talking. And so in essence, we've completely missed the opportunity to hear them.
I just want to say, interpolate that there's an interesting dynamic in that scenario you cite, where the woman is expressing something, man just wants to fix it. You know, there's so much illumination around marriage when you look at it from the point of view of feeding the us or starving the us. Because when you are feeding the us, it's when you're on the same team. There's a line in the book about, you know, are you on the same team? Being on the same team. When the arrows start flying, when you circle your wagons, do you shoot inwards or shoot outwards? And a big part of what's going on in the dynamics of a marriage are whether we are at this moment on the same team or in opposite corners of the room. So when my wife comes to me, I don't mean Anna, I'm speaking figuratively. So your spouse comes to you and has an issue, has a problem, is talking about something that happened that made her feel terrible. And now I try to rush in and fix it. What I am saying in my mind is, you know, there's a problem. She's suffering and I want to make it better. But what it easily comes across as is, you're a problem. I want to fix it, so I'll stop having a problem in my life. And the experience of it is we're on opposite sides of the table here. It's like, oh, I want your problem to go away, so I'm going to just tell you to put a Band-Aid on it, or to take this aspirin, or to tell that person what to say, or to, I got a solution, so my problem will go away. When you listen, you're getting on the same side of the table. When you're empathetic, you're on the same side of the table. What you're doing is you're getting on the same team. And getting on the same team is far more important than actually vanquishing the dragon in front of us. Because once you're on the same team, you can vanquish any dragon. I mean, there's almost nothing that can stop you. But when you're not on the same team, when the dragon is on the table in between the two of you and you're shooting from opposite directions, my metaphors are going all over the place here, by the way, but I'm just gonna keep plowing on anyway.
I'll go with it.
I'm gonna keep plowing. You stay with me. When you're on opposite sides of the table, then it's almost impossible to actually slay that dragon, vanquish that problem, come to a solution. The teamness of it, the usness of it, is the critical ingredient of the dilemma. Once that's there, there's another line in the book about when you're on the same team, there's like nothing that life can throw at you that you can't handle.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important to remember.
You yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I love to share this story because John and I have a joke in our marriage that the most important thing for a husband to do when his wife's on a rant is to say nothing. And about every 2 minutes while she's ranting, just step in and say, "The bastards."
Yeah.
And then sit back in your chair and keep listening as she keeps ranting. Because usually she's ranting about something that happened at the school with the children, or she's ranting about something that happened at work, or she's ranting about some situation outside of the marriage.
Yeah, customer service agent.
She just really wants you to hear her. But it's a way of commiserating. I mean, it's a joke between us. I mean, we share it with people because it's actually a really effective tool if you can sit there for 2 or 3 minutes and listen, and then say something that is in solidarity. Say, "Oh, that must have been hard," or, "Oh, wow, what a day you've had," because then you are just listening, and what you're saying is simply empathic and compassionate.
I think what it all comes down to in the book as well is that great teams, great us's don't happen by accident. They take work and they take effort, and I love the one-liner. It says, "Be so attentive it's criminal." Attentive it's criminal. And I just think, sometimes I just think sometimes you say that these things, they take practice. It's like a muscle that needs practicing. And I recall one of the examples about, he makes a great lasagna. I thought that was quite humorous, but I understand that that's based on a real person, real story. Is that true?
That is a real client, and all my clients that allowed me to put stories in the book without their names, people that I had real conversations with them about it and said, "Are you sure you're okay with this?" No one will ever know it's you. But that was a real client who was so angry at her husband. She had so much going on that when I asked her, "Well, what is it that you love about him? And what is it that he's really good at that you really appreciate?" And that's all she could come up with. "Well, he makes a wicked lasagna." And another story in the book that came directly from our lives is that, John and I spent 10 years dating. And it was because my daughter was only 10 years old. And there was no way I was going to allow a man in.
We've both been in a prior marriage.
Without us being married. And so I wanted to make certain that, she was secure. So, we took our time, and it was, it was very important.
And the story about what she said to you.
Oh, Bo. Yes, Bo. What Bo said was, "You should marry Jackson because he you like him, and he makes you happy."
You knew that you liked silver.
Yeah.
Yes, and he
He knew you
knew that
liked
you liked silver.
those stories are directly from our lives. My daughter actually sat down on my bed when she was maybe 14 or 15, and said, "Mom, you need to marry John. He's just so wonderful and he loves you and he makes you so happy. You're happy with John." It was the sweetest moment because it just came out of nowhere. Wasn't expecting the conversation.
There's vulnerability to embrace there, isn't it? Like you said, you'd been there, you'd married before. It's what does this mean? And there's some vulnerabilities to embrace.
I'll tell you,
Totally.
at that point in our lives, I was a fairly sophisticated adult gentleman. I had seen many things in life. I certainly had,
I wrote a book or two.
Yes, I'd written a book or two. Actually, I hadn't written a book or two yet at that point. I'd written no books, but that was still ahead of me. But I had what I considered a fairly extensive knowledge of all kinds of things in the world, but I didn't have that extensive an understanding of my own internal landscape, as I was describing, in some senses. And when Anna said, "I think we should wait to get married. I think we should wait. We both need a little time," which I resisted and fought with every fiber in my being, but we did anyway. And over the next few years, I came to understand, to realize that I had real doubts about my own abilities in a relationship because I'd failed. I'd been in a marriage that had gone, but now I wasn't sure what had gone wrong. Never really had figured that out. And I wasn't sure if the problem, was something endemic to my nature. I mean, I had some sort of self-figuring out to do. So it was really good that we took that time.
I love that. I think one of the lines that I really want our audience to really hear and to kind of meet where it is this idea that familiarity doesn't have to breed contempt. And Anna, I think
Yes.
I've heard you describe this really nicely. And let's help shape and focus our audience, their hearts and their minds. Why does familiarity not have to breed contempt?
Because contempt is an assassination of the other person. When you hold somebody in contempt, you aren't just criticizing them, you're demeaning their very person. And intimacy is really meant to be the idyllic situation. And I don't mean to make it sound, la la, but the situation where you can have true companionship with a person who sees you, gets you, understands you, and appreciates you. I mean, the first secret of the book is to appreciate. Its polar opposite is to criticize. And when you appreciate somebody with regularity and you're specific about it, it not only becomes a safe haven, and that, by the way, worldwide, the number one thing that men cite they want is a safe haven. They want a relationship where they can feel safe and received. And I think women, that's a given. I think it's what women have wanted all along. But I think women choose dependency. They choose to sit in the back seat. They choose a lot of things that aren't necessarily taking care of themselves in order to create that sense of security. But I think that when you're in an intimate relationship that really has all the facets of closeness and vulnerability and the ability to talk honestly, and you've dropped criticism, contempt is not even on the table. There's a great allowance, if you will, for one's foibles. Maybe you do leave your teacup on the counter. Is it something you want to raise every day and get critical about? Is it something that you want to be in the center of the argument of the marriage? Choose your battles. And, there's a phrase that people often say, a happy wife is a happy life. I think that it goes both ways. A happy husband is a happy life.
Just doesn't rhyme.
Yeah.
Doesn't rhyme.
But the reason I say it so strongly is that Men who feel appreciated and loved
Mm.
will go to the end of the earth for their woman.
Mm.
I mean, they will. And it's such a powerful thing to understand, is that it only takes minutes a day to adopt a spirit of generosity,
Yeah.
and to find ways to give to your spouse that
Yeah.
feed and nourish them as a person. I'm not talking about just bringing them a cup of coffee across the room. I'm talking about things that nourish their person.
Yeah.
And that's such a strong point. Go ahead, John.
I think also this thing with familiarity, what familiarity breeds has a lot to do with where you put your focus.
Yeah.
Which is really what, part of what Anna is saying. You can put your focus, your attention is like a flashlight, and the world is like a dark room. Where you shine your flashlight is what you see. So you can put your focus on faults, issues, things that irritate you, that you choose to be irritated by. Really, they don't irritate you. It's you doing the irritation. You can keep score, do the scorekeeper thing, and focus on the criticism, or you can move your flashlight over here and focus on finding things to appreciate. Where you put your focus is going to determine what grows in your attention. So familiarity can breed contempt. It often does happen, but depending on your focus, familiarity breeds compassion. And I prefer familiarity breeds compassion because the more you learn about your spouse, the more you see them, the more you understand them, the more you go, oh, look what she's doing. And I just love that. It's we call it a spirit of generosity. There's a line in the book that says, when in doubt, be kind. Yeah. It's when you just make a decision to approach your partnership with the spirit of kindness, then familiarity breeds compassion.
Yeah. I love that. My wife and I have been together since we were 15. So this year we will have been together 20 years. And
wow.
I've lived both sides of that. We've bred the contempt and the resentment. And then in the last 3 years, we have found that spirit of generosity and compassion and grace. And I know which one I prefer, and I know which one that we are better for. But I'd love to know kind of, what does always better than yesterday mean in the context of the Go-Giver marriage?
I'm just going to jump in and say there's a line in the book that says every individual is an undiscovered continent. And I think that's so important because it isn't just divorces that we talk about. It's also those marriages that go a certain point and then just become kind of preserved in wax for the rest of their lives. As Anna says, two people sitting on a couch, the TV is the conversation. That's such a tragedy because there's so much more to find in the other person. Every individual is an unexplored continent, and with all the depth and breadth of that, it's huge. So there's so much more to discover. Every day better than yesterday can go for 50, 60, 70 years. It can go on for decades and decades and decades. And I say that in part as a way to give people hope. Marriages can be not just take a wounded marriage back to ground zero where you were when you got together, but into the plus and plus and plus and plus. It really does. We're happier. We say this to each other all the time. I love you more now than I did like last year. And last year was pretty good. But that's our experience of it. It just gets better every year.
It's like a line you say in the book: the more I know, the more I learn there is to know.
Yes, exactly.
I love that. Where can people find the Go-Giver marriage?
We have a website, which is gogivermarriage.com. No hyphens, no breaks, just gogivermarriage.com. The book is there. We do you can order the book there on either side of the pond. We got links for everywhere. But of course, it's on Amazon UK, Amazon US. It's everywhere. Also, we have some, if you order the book through the site, we have some freebies. There's a tremendous storm outside right now, and it might cut off electricity any moment. If we vanish, it'll be because
that's why I'm sitting in the dark.
You have everything that you need to survive the storm. I've read your book.
Yeah. There you go. So I appreciate that. Storm is nothing. And on the site, we also have a workshop that we do called Living the 5 Secrets to Lasting Love. And that is a 2.5-hour Zoom workshop. We do live with people. It's very interactive. We do that currently once a month. We may need to step up that schedule, but it's once a month for now. You can book that right through the site. And also we have all the podcasts like this that we've been on. We have them all, live links to all of them on our site. So it's kind of the whole Go Giver Marriage universe is there on our website.
Also
And you can
coaching.
contact us. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, please.
My coaching
Yes.
schedule is available through the website as well. So if people want to coach, and I do coach people from Europe and from Great Britain as well as in the United States. So it is, that's there, and you can pick a slot and grab it. So we have lots of other kinds of workshops that we're developing, and the coaching program we're very excited about because we want to train Go Giver marriage coaches around the world, people who will do the work with others.
Yeah, Ryan, I've published over 30 books, but this is the first book we've done together. And it's also the first book that I've been part of that is just the beginning, rather than usually publishing a book is usually an end point. But for us, it's just the beginning. It's really a calling, as I said earlier. And so we will be developing programs around the content and the work and the ideas of the book, ongoingly, year by year.
I love that. I truly believe that heart-centered living leaves a heartprint. It leaves a trace in the lives of those that we interact with and that we impact. And you've already seen what's happened with the Go Giver series, and just to think of the transformation that this book's going to enable. Like, my wife and I managed to survive without this book, but if we'd read something like this before our struggles and challenges, maybe we'd have embraced conversations that had made that less painful. And I hope that it falls into the right hands of those that need it. And if there are people, there will be people that are inevitably listening to this that will go and listen, and there'll be something within that gives them hope for a better future.
Yes, from your words, from your lips, rather.
I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us. I'd really appreciate hearing a final thought from your good selves.
Yeah, I think that marriages were meant to be living entities that grow, and that you were meant to be not only embraced, but to grow within them. And so there is no wound too deep that can't heal. There is no pattern of behavior that can't shift. And to remember that your mind is a spotlight, and that what you think about expands. And so how you think about your marriage and how you embrace it will have a great deal of impact on it.
Yeah, I would just add to that, love is not an accident, and happiness is not an accident.
I love that. Thank you so much for your words. Thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate you both.
Thank you so much, Ryan.
Hey, my friends, thank you for making it to the end of the interview here on YouTube. I hope that our time spent together has left you a little bit better than before you push play. Before you go anywhere, please leave a comment down below, some of your key reflections, your key takeaways. I love hearing from you and what this conversation has inspired in you. Let me know what you're going to do as a result of this conversation. I will be back next Wednesday, where I will share another inspiring guest. To make sure that you don't miss that, please do subscribe, hit the bell, and you will be notified as soon as it goes live. If you're curious to know how I, through Always Better Than Yesterday, can serve you, your team, your organization, please do visit alwaysbetterthanyesterday.com, and it will be my honor and privilege to help you in any way I can. Keep leading, my friends. I've been Ryan Hartley, host of the Always Better Than Yesterday podcast here on YouTube. Always love.